There's a scene near the end of Batman Under the Red Hood that most people remember as a villain's breakdown. Jason Todd, bloodied, furious, finally unmasked, points a gun at the Joker's head and stares at Batman. And then he says something that wasn't a threat, something that wasn't even really about the Joker. He says, "I thought I'd be the last person you'd ever let him hurt." Watch that scene again, because what most people saw as a broken boy having a meltdown, that was actually the most precise diagnosis anyone has ever delivered about Batman. A diagnosis built not from bitterness, but from evidence, from years of watching the system up close, from trusting a man completely and paying the highest price when that trust turned out to be one-directional. And nobody listened. Not the fans, not the critics, not Bruce Wayne himself. He's the greatest detective in the DC universe. The man who trained under Ra's al Ghul, operated alongside the Justice League, and built contingency plans for every superhuman on the planet just in case. He is discipline made flesh. The living argument that one person, through pure force of will, can refuse to become the thing that destroyed them. That's not mythology. That's what Batman actually is. None of that is being questioned here. But Jason Todd saw something underneath all of it. Something Bruce had been hiding behind the mission, behind the code, behind the cowl for decades. And the terrifying thing isn't that Jason was right. The terrifying thing is that Batman knew he was right. Over the next 10 minutes, you're going to see how every scene Jason Todd ever shared with Batman was building toward one verdict, and how Batman, the most brilliant, most disciplined hero in Gotham, proved every single one of Jason's fears correct. Not by failing to be a hero, but by being exactly the kind of hero he chose to be. To understand what Jason Todd saw, you first have to understand what he was before Batman found him. Jason didn't arrive the way Dick Grayson did. Dick came from the circus, from a family, from love, from the kind of grief that breaks people gently. Batman found Dick Grayson and saw a reflection of his own loss, and he gave that boy structure, purpose, a name. Jason Todd came from Crime Alley. His father was muscle for Gotham's underworld. His mother was gone. And when Batman first encountered him, Jason was in the process of stealing the tires off the Batmobile. Not because he was reckless, because he was surviving. Because Gotham had taught him that the only things that were actually yours were the things you were willing to take. That matters, because what Batman saw in Jason wasn't a mirror of his grief. It was a mirror of his rage. The part of Bruce Wayne that gets locked away every time the cowl goes on. The part that wants to burn the whole city down for what it took from him. And instead of confronting that, Batman recruited it. He trained Jason harder than he trained Dick, pushed him further, let him go to edges that Dick Grayson would have pulled back from. And for a while, that combination worked. Jason was more willing, more instinctive in the field. Batman got a Robin who fought like someone who'd actually grown up in the streets they were protecting. The audience loved that version of Batman. The mentor who took in the damaged kid. The symbol who refused to let another generation of Gotham's forgotten fall through the cracks. But here is what nobody examines. Batman didn't train Jason to survive Gotham. He trained Jason to serve the mission. And those are two completely different things. Dick Grayson was trained with guardrails, structure, discipline, a code that protected him from himself as much as from the city. Jason was trained as a weapon and handed a costume. Batman saw the rage and pointed it outward. He never once dealt with what was underneath it. And a boy that dangerous, carrying that much unprocessed grief in a city that eats people for breakfast, that's not mentorship, that's deployment. Jason trusted him anyway. That's the part that makes the whole story hurt. He trusted Batman completely, not naively. Jason Todd was never naive. He trusted him the way someone trusts the only stable thing they've ever had. He followed the code because Batman told him the code was worth following. He held the line because Batman said the line protected people. He believed it, right up until the moment the Joker took that belief away with a crowbar. The Joker beat Jason Todd to death in a warehouse. Not a reality warping supervillain, not an alien, not a force of nature. A man with a crowbar, alone with a teenager, while Batman raced across Gotham and arrived too late. The building exploded. Jason was gone. Now, the film doesn't dwell on the failure itself. Batman failed. That's established in the opening minutes, and then the story moves forward. What the film does dwell on is what Batman did after, because that's where the crack becomes a canyon you can't look away from. Batman put the Joker back in Arkham, the same Arkham that has never, not once in the history of Gotham, permanently contained him. The same same revolving door that Batman, with his detective's mind and his decades of evidence, knows with absolute certainty will open again. The Joker has escaped Arkham so many times, it stopped being news. It's a pattern, it's a system, and Batman knows it's a broken system. He knows it better than anyone. He put him back anyway. And then something happened that nobody predicted. Jason Todd came back, not as a ghost, not as a hallucination, as the Red Hood, the name the Joker himself used before he fell into a vat of chemicals and became the thing that killed Jason. The symbolism wasn't subtle. Jason came back wearing the Joker's old identity to send one message to Batman. I understand now what this city is. Do you? And the Red Hood's operation wasn't chaos. That's the part the film buries under action sequences. Jason didn't come back to burn Gotham down. He came back with a strategy. He took over the drug trade, not to run it, but to contain it, regulate it, keep the product clean so fewer people died, keep the violence controlled so fewer civilians got caught in it. He was running a harm reduction operation in a city whose official hero had spent 20 years refusing to reduce the most obvious harm of all. When Batman catches up to him, the charge he levels is, "You're stealing territory from Black Mask and killing anyone who gets in your way." And Red Hood's answer cuts right through it. "I'm cleaning up Gotham more than you ever did." That's not a villain's boast. That's a performance review. And Batman never actually refutes it. Let's talk about how the world received Jason Todd, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. When Batman Under the Red Hood came out in 2010, it earned a 100% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Every review praised its emotional depth, its moral complexity, its voice performances, Jensen Ackles as Jason Todd, Bruce Greenwood as a haunted, layered Batman, John DiMaggio delivering what many consider the most terrifying animated Joker ever committed to screen, and the dominant cultural read, the one that stuck, the one that shaped every YouTube essay and Reddit thread for the next 15 years, was this: Red Hood makes a compelling argument, but he goes too far. Goes too far. That phrase. It got repeated so often it became consensus. And once something becomes consensus, people stop interrogating it. They just pass it along. Red Hood makes a compelling argument, but. Always the but. Always the retreat back to Batman's nobility. But here's what's actually happening in that sentence. When people say Jason goes too far, they're accepting Batman's framing as the neutral standard. They're saying the correct amount of action against a serial killer who beat a child to death is 0. They're saying the emotional, grief-driven response is Jason's, and the rational, moral response is Batman's. And they've been saying it so consistently that the actual content of Jason's argument gets lost every single time. Nobody voted on Jason Todd's death thinking they were voting on Batman's code. But that telephone poll in 1988, 5,343 votes to kill him versus 5,271 to let him live, was 72 people deciding that the angry Robin was more trouble than he was worth. 72 people who, like Batman, were more comfortable with a tidier story. Jason Todd has been getting voted out of the room since before he died. The fandom decided he was too abrasive, too aggressive, too much. And when he came back with proof that the system failed him, they called him a villain and gave Batman the moral high ground. Sound familiar? Take the most inconvenient person in the room, make them difficult, make them loud, and suddenly everyone's debating their delivery instead of their argument. That's what happened to Jason Todd. That's what's been happening for 40 years. Here's the thing about being right too early, in the wrong room, at the wrong volume. The film is called Batman Under the Red Hood, not Jason Todd the Verdict. Batman's name is in the title. Batman's guilt structures the narrative. Batman's code frames the climax. And because the storytelling is genuinely exceptional, because Brandon Vietti directed it with real emotional intelligence, and Judd Winnick wrote it with real love for these characters, most audiences accepted the frame without questioning it. They watched Jason build a containment system for Gotham's underworld and called it villainy. They watched him give Batman every opportunity to acknowledge what the code had cost, and when Batman refused, they called it nobility. They watched the most honest conversation in the history of the Batman mythos, and then they walked away talking about the fight choreography. Because the film, brilliantly, almost unfairly, keeps putting Jason in positions that make him easy to dismiss. He's holding a gun. He's got a body count. He's in a villain's lair with the Joker tied to a chair. Every visual cue screams antagonist. And the human brain is lazy. Give it enough visual context and it stops listening to the words. Strip all of that away. Strip away the guns, the warehouse, the Red Hood helmet, the explosions. Just take the argument. Batman's code costs lives. The Joker is the proof. Every person the Joker has killed since being recaptured and released, every single one of them is a direct consequence of a choice Batman made and remade. Not once, not twice, every single time. Jason Todd is the most visible cost. He's the one with a name, with a face, with enough love for Batman that he came back from the dead to demand an answer. But he's not the only one. He's just the one standing in the room. And Batman knows this. That's what makes his answer so devastating. He doesn't say Jason is wrong. He doesn't defend the body count. He doesn't argue that Arkham works, or that the system is improving, or that there's a better solution he's working toward. He says, if I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back. That's it. That's the whole argument. That's what 15 years of Gotham's victims are worth. Batman's peace of mind. There's one more line that almost nobody quotes, and it's the one that contains everything. Standing in that warehouse, finally unmasked, facing the man he once called father, Jason Todd says this: "Is that what you think this is about? That you let me die? I don't know what clouds your judgment worse, your guilt or your antiquated sense of morality." That word, antiquated. Jason isn't calling Batman evil. He isn't calling him a coward. He's calling him obsolete. He's saying the code Batman built in the wake of his parents' murder, the one designed to make sure Bruce Wayne never became a killer, has hardened into something that no longer serves justice. It serves Bruce. It protects the identity Bruce constructed to survive the worst night of his life. And every Gotham citizen who dies as a consequence of that protection is paying a price they never agreed to pay. Here's where the verdict lands. Batman's no-kill rule was never really about justice. It was about control. It was the decision of a traumatized child, made in the dark, that the only way to survive the worst thing that had ever happened was to draw a line and never cross it. And that decision calcified. Grief became code. Code became mission. Mission became more important than the people the mission existed to protect. Jason Todd was the proof. Not because he died. Heroes die. Gotham has a long list. But because of why Batman couldn't prevent it. Because Batman had already decided, before Jason ever put on the mask, before he ever ran a rooftop, before he ever bled for this city, that some costs were acceptable. That the Joker remaining alive and mobile and dangerous was an acceptable cost of maintaining the code. That whoever paid that cost next was a variable, not a name. He just never said it out loud. Jason Todd said it out loud. And the film still calls him the antagonist. Think about that. Genuinely sit with that. Batman Under the Red Hood has a 100% critical rating. It is praised universally for its emotional intelligence, its moral complexity, its willingness to ask hard questions. And in every single piece of coverage, every review, every retrospective, every video essay, the dominant conclusion is the same. Batman is tragic but noble. Red Hood is right but goes too far. But goes too far by whose standard? By the standard of the man whose code got him killed? By the logic of a system that will have the Joker out of Arkham again by the next storyline? By the end of the film, Batman wins. Jason is alive. The Joker is captured. Gotham exhales. The code survives intact. And the audience goes home satisfied because the structure of the story told them to be satisfied. But somewhere in Gotham, a family just got the worst phone call of their lives because the Joker was released from Arkham and Batman was there when it happened, and he chose to let it happen because crossing that line would cost him something. That man knows this. He has always known this. He will keep knowing it, and he will keep choosing the code. Jason Todd was right about Batman. Right that the code protects Bruce Wayne more than it protects Gotham. Right that the no-kill rule is a psychological fortress dressed up as a moral one. Right that Batman has always understood the cost and has always paid it in other people's lives. He wasn't right about the solution. He was never going to be. Grief doesn't produce solutions, it produces verdicts. And nobody listened, because listening would mean admitting that the symbol has a flaw built into its foundation. That the most celebrated hero in Gotham built his legacy on a rule that keeps him safe while Gotham bleeds. That's the thing Jason never fully understood about Batman. Bruce Wayne doesn't wear the cowl to protect Gotham. He wears it to protect himself. And the cruelest part of the whole story, it's working perfectly. If you think Red Hood went too far, name one person the Joker didn't kill after leaving Arkham. I'll wait.